Hello, everybody, and welcome to Theology 101. Today, we are going to look at the book of Second John. The book of Second John is the 24th book of the New Testament. The New Testament has 5 sections: the Gospels, the Acts of the Apostles, the Pauline epistles, the general epistles, and the book of Revelation. The Gospels contain the life, ministry, teachings, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The Acts of the Apostles give a historical account of the growth and spread of the Christian church. The Pauline epistles are a collection of letters written by Paul to different churches during his time, and the general epistles are letters written by other leaders such as Peter, John, and Jude to different churches. And finally, the book of Revelation gives a picture of how the story of the world will end with Jesus returning to earth to restore it and to reign on it. The book of Second John is part of the general epistle section of the New Testament. Second John is the second shortest book in the New Testament. It has only 245 words in the Greek text and would have easily fit on one single piece of papyri. This letter is written by the Apostle John, who exhorts his readers to a certain response. What is that response? The Apostle John wants his readers to continue to walk in the truth, love one another, and be on guard against false teachers. So what does it mean to walk in truth according to the Apostle John? It means to show hospitality. Does that surprise you? Why does John feel a need to write a letter about the topic of hospitality? During this time, traveling Christian missionaries and preachers couldn't just find a hotel to stay in. There was no such thing. Most innkeepers were very dishonorable and were known to rip people off who stayed with them. Roman writings even talked about how infamous innkeepers were during this time. Inns were notoriously dirty and flea infested. So it became necessary for Christians with property to host traveling missionaries and preachers. We see several examples in the New Testament. When Paul traveled to Philippi, he stayed with Lydia. When he was in Thessalonica, he stayed with Jason. When he traveled to Corinth, he stayed with Gaius. When he was in Caesarea, he stayed with Philip. Paul wasn't the only one who needed to depend on Christian hospitality to do ministry. This was also the case for Christian preachers and missionaries during his time. But Christian hospitality was often abused. There would be false teachers who know that Christians will open up their homes to traveling preachers, so they will pose as Christian preachers, use people to stay in their homes, and would teach a message that was contrary to the gospel. These false teachers were motivated by greed and profit and were looking for free room and board to save costs. It was against this background that John writes 2nd and 3rd John. He wants Christians to know how to deal with false teachers in 2nd John, and he commends those who were hospitable to true teachers in 3rd John. So 2nd John focuses on the negative, while 3rd John focuses on the positive. Now, why does hospitality matter? The word hospitality in the New Testament means to love foreigners. Why should Christians be hospitable? Because God loves foreigners. Listen, we are called to be hospitable to those who need our help. You see, Christian preachers depended on the generosities of the members to fulfill God's mission of preaching the gospel. Without Lydia, Jason, Gaius, and Philip, Paul would not have been able to travel freely and plant churches. And those of us who are to follow these examples are to show the same type of hospitality to those who are foreigners and need our help. We are to open up our homes and share our resources to help other Christians. But in this letter, John wants to focus on how to discern whether you are being taken advantage of and how to deal with those who don't fulfill God's mission but their own agenda. Look at 2nd John verse 7. For many deceivers have gone out into the world, those who do not confess the coming of Jesus Christ in the flesh. Such a one is the deceiver and the antichrist. Although John is thankful that some Christians are walking in the truth, he is concerned that many deceivers are around. These deceivers deny the incarnation of Jesus. According to him, anybody who doesn't believe in Jesus as both God and man is not only a deceiver, but the Antichrist. Now, John is not saying that unbelievers are demon possessed. When he uses the term Antichrist, he refers to people who are against Christ. He's not referring to a specific historical figure, but to people who are not for Christ. For John, any person who does not believe in Jesus and persuades others not to believe in Jesus are the Antichrist. They are against Christ. So considering this reality, how should we respond to people who deny the truth? Look at 2nd John verse 8. Watch yourselves so that you may not lose what we have worked for, but may win a full reward. Now, John is not saying that you need to be suspicious of all unbelievers. He is commenting specifically on unbelievers who posed as Christian teachers and ended up spreading false messages about Jesus. Without having discernment, you will not finish the race of faith and win, but you will lose in the process. So what does John mean by losing or winning? He is not talking about salvation, since we cannot win or lose it. John is referring to the reward of faithful servant. One of the ways you will not live a life that will be commended by God is when you are not watchful and just follow whatever false messages you hear from false teachers. You might not lose your salvation, but you will lose out on the potential rewards you could have received from Christ, but instead lost out on because you are not intentional to who you listen to. John now comes to his application point in 2 John verse 10. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, do not receive him into your house or give him any greeting. John is not saying that Christian hospitality means that you should receive everybody indiscriminately. John is not saying that we shouldn't welcome unbelievers to visit our church so that they can hear the gospel, interact with our community, and hopefully come to faith. He is referring specifically to those who come with the message that directly goes against the core beliefs of Christianity. Also, keep in mind the context. The false teachers John is referring to were denying the incarnation of Jesus. So John is not advocating that we refuse fellowship or even teachers who we do not agree with on secondary issues. This still allows us the freedom to fellowship and even hear from Christian preachers, even if we might differ on our views about baptism, church government, or spiritual gifts. But John wants to be clear that when a teacher proves himself or herself to not affirm the gospel, we should not welcome this person into our church gatherings or even our homes. What is the danger of showing hospitality to somebody who doesn't teach Jesus accurately? False teaching which denies Jesus robs people of knowing God and would send their souls to hell if people believed in their messages. And to welcome such teachers, even indirectly by housing them or letting them preach on Sundays, is to participate in such evil works that destroy people's understanding of Jesus and inevitably their souls. Part of being watchful over your soul is to be watchful over the types of people you let speak into your life. Be careful about who you show hospitality towards. John is not saying to withhold your generosity and to be suspicious of all people, but John is lovingly warning us about the people we allow into our homes, both literally and figuratively, because of the messages that they preach. Thank you to today's sponsor, On Reverence. They offer a free Bible reading app called Awesome Bible. If you want to find out more, I'll leave some links below in the description box. If you missed the last video about the book of 1 John, I'll leave a link here for you to watch. And until next time, see you.